La, 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 la. Okay, first episode jitters, so we're just gonna get those out of the way. All right, welcome to the show. Do you ever look at the news, close the apps, and think, okay, so is anyone else quietly panicking, or is it just me? And I know we've seen a lot of that in recent weeks. Because let's face it, the world can sometimes feel like a dumpster fire, and the news just keeps pouring gasoline on top of it. We're told life has never been better for our species, and yet something isn't adding up. We have massive crises across the globe economically, healthcare related, mental health wise. And so it's a huge dissonance we're seeing between what we're hearing and what the actuality of the situation is. And I'm not trying to discount it and say that this is not the best time to be alive for a species, because in many regards it is. I do like indoor plumbing. But if you ever had that nagging feeling that something isn't fine, you're in the right place. Hi, my name is Priya, and welcome to the first season of Fed Up at Figuring It Out, where we unpack systems of power, politics, and identity, one research rant at a time. I'm a fourth-year university student, triple majoring in global development studies, communication and media studies, and international indigenous studies. I've also picked up a few certificates in international studies and social sciences and humanities along the way. Now, I'm not an expert in everything, but I am endlessly curious, equipped with a laptop, a mic, a love of reading, and a bit of a tendency to overthink. So, welcome to the show. Growing up, I learned to look at the world through multiple lenses, to see overlap, intersection, and nuance. I bounced around from a couple schools. I've lived in two different areas, in a small town and in a city. And I was homeschooled for part of my life, publicly schooled, privately schooled. So I've kind of been all over the map, which gave me a really good foundation to see different lives and different worldviews. And by the time I reached high school and then university, I started noticing patterns everywhere. It was quite hard not to, honestly. These weren't isolated issues we're seeing. Like one thing connected to another, and it frustrated me that people in charge didn't seem to see that. But maybe they do. Maybe they do see the problem. And the problems just feel so overwhelming that it's easier to pretend everything is separate and nuanced. This podcast exists to trace those connections. And you can't talk about countries living in extreme poverty without talking about the impacts of climate change. You can't talk about gendered expectations without talking about capitalism. And so it's these things that layer on top of one another that we're seeing more and more of. Everything is intersected together. And each episode might seem like its own topic, but together they layer into a bigger picture. Now, I don't want you drowning in the complexities. Trust me, I've done that more than enough times to think we're doomed mindset. Instead, we'll talk into nuance slowly. Because we're not totally screwed. There are people dedicating their lives to understanding this mess, as there always have been. The point is to notice the overlap and figure out small, meaningful ways we each can make a difference. This show explores the big and messy systems shaping our world, from capitalism to gender norms, queer love, red pill culture, and everything in between. With a mix of research, ranting, and compassion, each episode digs into a theme. Echo chambers on the internet, the myth of emasculation, why women's books get labeled as romance while men's become classics in school, and more. This isn't an experts podcast. It's a podcast by someone who's angry, curious, hopeful, and fed up, frankly. If you've ever thought, why does it all feel like bullshit? You're exactly where you need to be. If you like this conversation and want to hear more, hit follow and send this to a friend. I'm going to be posting on Instagram and YouTube about what episode's coming out next, and I'm going to be posting bi-weekly. I'll see you in the next episode.